Overnight, D.C. police sources confirming to News Nation that in 2014, Ana Walshe, then Ana Nip, reported Brian Walshe, quote, made a statement over the telephone that he was going to kill her and her friends. The case never progressed because police say the Massachusetts mother of three, who would eventually marry Brian Walshe, stopped cooperating.
And may they be drawn ever closer to you in their suffering.
Thursday, dozens in the Cohasset community came together to pray by candlelight for Ana, who police say was last seen January 1st.
She was a great person, very loving, very supporting, a great friend.
A few close friends of Ana's joined to comfort each other, but others who live here say they felt drawn because of how close-knit their community is.
I think we all need to stay closer together, be in touch with people, let's see what's going on in their lives.
Meanwhile, Brian Walshe, 47, remains in custody, charged with lying to investigators, as police revealed chilling evidence like blood and a broken knife with blood on it found inside the couple's home.
WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Live on WFLA Now, this is Hey JB. Here's JB Buno.
A mother of three vanishes on New Year's Day with no trace of her whereabouts since. Massachusetts authorities working around the clock to find out what happened to 39-year-old Ana Walshe as her husband remains locked up, charged with lying to police. What's the very latest? We're going to break it down here with you live in the Stream Center on WFLA Now. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Here, folks, JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. By now, if you've been paying attention to the reports on social media, the reports on, of course, various websites, Ana Walshe has been missing since New Year's Day. Her husband remains in custody in Massachusetts, and the Cohasset, Massachusetts community getting fewer and fewer answers as the days go by as to what happened to Ana Walshe. I want to bring in News Nation correspondent, DC correspondent Evan Lambert, who's joining us from Cohasset. Evan, thank you so much for taking some time to help us break this down. You've been on the ground now all week long in Massachusetts, gathering the very latest. We're going to review this case and go into the details here in just a moment. But as our audience is just now starting to file in across all platforms, what is the very latest from Massachusetts? People want to know what happened to Ana.
Yeah, of course. That is the lingering and main question. And thanks for having me, JB. The biggest thing that we learned really just from the last few hours is this troubling information out of DC from 2014. So Ana Walshe, in a police report in 2014, called police and said that her husband had been threatening to kill her and friends. Now, he was not her husband at the time. Brian Walshe was a boyfriend at the time in 2014. They hadn't gotten married yet. And the police report actually does not name him, but several sources, I work in DC, I used to work in local news in DC, several sources from the DC Police Department did confirm to us that Brian Walshe was the subject of that police report. It mentions also that he lives in Boston. And also what we've learned about that is that case never progressed from 2014 because police say Ana Walshe at some point stopped cooperating with them. So he was never charged. That case didn't go forward, but we do know that this was a police report that she filed in 2014 saying that over the phone, he had been threatening to kill her and her friends. So obviously that's extremely troubling, granted the fact that investigators are continuing to try to find out what happened to her. And it shows, that obviously, according to her and according to this police report, that he had been violent, at least threatening violence against her in the past.
As we're live here on social media with News Nation's Evan Lambert, you can see on the bottom of your screen that we've activated Share to Help. Why have we done that? Because this is still officially a missing persons case. While, of course, there are some grim and ominous discoveries being made over the course of the week, authorities are still holding out hope to find Ana Walshe alive. Let's also not forget, she's a mother of three. Her children, I believe, three sons, Evan, all between the ages of 2 and 6 years old. Those three boys have a mother who hasn't been seen in nearly 2 weeks, a father that is in custody. So that brings us here to the video. We're going to show you some of the video that's going to cycle here on your screen of Brian Walshe arrested this past Sunday, and the evidence that has come out from authorities, grim to say the least. That's a word that we're going to be using quite a bit over the course of this stream. It's just ominous to hear details about the broken knife, the blood that was found in the basement. There's also details about potentially him seeking to get his car detailed, correct? I mean, so what are some of the things that we're learning about Brian Walshe as well from authorities specifically?
Yeah, so a lot of this, JB, came out of the court proceeding that was on Monday, his arraignment on that charge of lying to investigators about his whereabouts in the days after Ana Walshe's, his wife's disappearance. And so that's the only charge that he's being held on right now. But that's also where we got some of these details that are extremely troubling about what investigators found in the home. As you mentioned, blood in the basement, a knife that was damaged that appeared to have blood on it as well. And then they also told us about what they saw, were able to find about where he did go, where he failed to mention that he went, according to prosecutors. They have him on surveillance video, they say, at a Home Depot in Rockland, Massachusetts. This is relatively close to where his mother's home is in Swampscott. And so they have him on video there on surveillance using cash, they say, to buy $450 worth of cleaning supplies, things like tarps, mops, buckets, tape, things like that. And so obviously that's another big piece of evidence that doesn't look good for him, right? When you put it all together with the fact that blood was found. And at this point, what we've been told the last few days, that investigators are going through all that evidence. They also say that and we know that they searched 2 trash facilities in the Boston area and that they recovered items from those facilities. It's unclear exactly what they uncovered, but we know that they're testing all of that, trying to find out if it is going to be of evidentiary value to them. And so far, really, we know that there was blood found in the basement, right? But nobody has said for sure that that blood is Ana's blood. So I imagine that some of that forensic testing would be done to try to determine that. And again, if that comes back to be the case, that would be even more troubling for him.
When it comes to these cases, Evan, and you know this, that you'll hear oftentimes from law enforcement sources that speak to various members of the media and various networks. There was the report that came out that Brian Walshe allegedly searched online for how to dismember and how to dispose of a 115-pound woman's body. That's another really ominous detail. And also, too, you were talking about that Home Depot trip. If I remember correctly, I believe the prosecutors also said that he was wearing a mask and gloves inside that Home Depot as well. So when you piece this all together, this isn't looking all that great. While there is, of course, there remains hope, I'm sure, out there with folks as far as finding Ana Walshe alive. When you piece all of this together, when you add it all up, things are certainly not being pointed in the right direction as of right now. I want to get to some of the comments. You can use hashtag HeyJB. You can use hashtag HeyEvan to have your comment featured on screen. Let's go to YouTube Live for Cassandra. Hashtag HeyJB. What are the next steps in this case? Does law enforcement have to tell us what information they have, or do you think that they will keep it under their vest as they did in the Idaho case, Evan?
Yeah, I think they don't have to tell us anything, right? What we hear usually is the public details discussed in court. So the next court hearing for Brian Walshe is not until a month out, I believe a month out from when he was arraigned. So we're talking about the beginning of February. And you'd imagine that they would have some additional filings with that next hearing. But again, that's just on the charge of lying to police. Now, if in these next few days, weeks, there's an update to the charges against him, and let's say he is accused of murder, then there would be more information, right? He would have to face a second arraignment on a charge like that, and then we could expect to learn more. But in between that, really, investigators being very tight-lipped, and they have that right because they don't want to give away everything they have. And so I think people, kind of view this in the mind of, watching criminal dramas and things like CSI. They can take their time here because Brian Walshe does not appear to be going anywhere. He was granted that $500,000 bail, but no one's paid it yet. And he would have violated probation in this ongoing federal case that was happening against him. And so even if someone were to pay that bail on his behalf, he would be put into the custody of likely U.S. Marshals and would still be held. So they don't really, they have him on this one charge and he's not going anywhere. So they really can be meticulous with this investigation and wait for all the evidence testing and forensics to come back before they make any moves.
One thing I want to point out here too, so much has been made, and I just saw a comment in one of our comment sections. Again, we're live across all platforms here on WFLA Now with News Nation's Evan Lambert. People were making a lot about the perp walk that was done when we first got our look, and you see Brian Walshe, Ana Walshe's husband, smile. Feel free to explain what you thought of that moment, Evan. When I saw that moment, when I see him smiling, it's because he's looking out and he is seeing right here. This is the moment. Yeah. He's smiling. It's because he's looking out and he's likely seeing at least half a dozen camera crews or so, just a large media presence, probably not what he was expecting. And that smile, of course, has really resonated with people on social media, and of course, not in a good way.
Yeah, of course. It was definitely chilling to watch. We hit the ground right after that happened. I believe that was the next day on Monday. And so that shot, I believe, was when he was being taken from the Cohasset Police Department to court to be arraigned on Monday. And so, yeah, when I saw that smile, it definitely felt chilling to me, knowing that his wife, we don't know what happened to her. We don't have any evidence about where she is right now. And then that would be his reaction. And maybe it was a reaction to him seeing the cameras there, gathered, and how much attention this had already gotten by then. But also, I mean, let's also mention, we've been digging into court papers over this last week as well of Brian Walshe's past. And he hasn't been described in good terms by folks who knew him best. Some of his family members, there was this big dispute over his late father's estate and will. And people who knew him, family, friends, they described him as physically violent, as a sociopath. So that may also explain that reaction. I don't know too much about psychology or anything like that, but clearly this is a guy who had been troubled for some time. And that was explained by people that were closest to him, including people that were friends of his father and his cousin, who was going back and forth with him, I believe back in 2018, 2019, about his father's estate. It seems that his father just totally cut him out because there were accusations that Brian Walshe had stolen $1 million from the father, who was a renowned neurologist, I believe, at one of the very well-known hospitals here in Boston, Brigham and Women's Hospital. And so because of the way he's been described, that I wasn't surprised, I'll say, to see the smile there and to be chilled by that.
I've been following some of the local reporting done out of some of the Boston affiliates as well. And as we hear more and more from some folks in the Boston area, the greater Boston area, who interacted with the Walshes, you hear that, everything appeared to be okay. I also have seen some reports about their New Year's Eve party and so on and so forth. And it just really goes to show, it's a reminder for our audience that you think that you see a couple and they might appear to be happy and everything on the surface might appear to be okay, but really behind the scenes, you just don't know what is going on with your neighbors, your friends, your cousins, your family members, whoever it may be. We only have another 5 minutes with Evan, so I want to get to this comment. We'll get to a couple more here before we wrap up. German wants to know, #KJB, when has Ana been seen last? On New Year's Eve or on January 1st? And if I have this correct, it's on January 1st, correct, Evan?
Yeah, that's what prosecutors were saying, is that she was last seen on the 1st. And so we know that, according to them, he hadn't reported her missing and that her work reported her missing on the 4th. He apparently, in interviews, told investigators that she told him that she had some emergency to deal with at work, and she was going back to Washington, D.C., where she had been commuting for this job on a weekly basis to deal with an emergency on the 1st, and that she kissed him goodbye, and that she would have taken an Uber or some kind of rideshare or taxi to the airport. We know that police never found any evidence of her ever taking a rideshare. She did have a flight booked for January 3rd to go back to DC, and she never used that ticket. So again, according to investigators, she was last seen on January 1st, and I imagine that would be a report of that friend that was at the New Year's party. I'm not sure if he left before midnight, but that what investigators are telling us is that January 1st was the last time that she was seen.
We have a lot of viewers that follow the stories of missing persons cases and the disappearances of spouses. And Jen wants to know, #HJB, do we know if there's a big life insurance policy involved? Have you heard anything about that, Evan? Because that is, in the past, that can be a thread when it comes to, trouble in a household.
Yeah, I guess if she had one where, something happened to her, he would stand to get some large amount of money. I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't know if those are public. Usually, I don't think they're public documents or anything like that. There's nothing that we've seen that would indicate that, but it doesn't mean that that's not the case, I guess. What we do know is that it's something that I wanted to touch on, and our reporting has revealed in the last couple of days, is that there was definitely a rush to sell off some assets by Ana Walshe specifically. She owned a condo in her own name in Revere, which is not too far from here, I guess a suburb of Boston. And she was renting that condo. And we did find that on December 29th, so this was just days before she was last seen, that sale finally went through. And she stood to make about $80,000 in profit on that. I believe she sold the condo for $220,000. We were looking at the deed and the history of the transaction just yesterday. And that was in her own name. So I talked to someone who's familiar with that transaction, with that sale, and that person was telling me that it was relayed to them that they hadn't talked to Ana directly, but it was relayed to them through a sales agent that she really wanted to get rid of this place quickly, and that she wanted to move to DC. And so, I mean, I'm guessing that maybe that was permanently, because we know she had a house that she had recently bought there not too long ago, and where she had stayed during the week. She'd been for some time doing this commute to DC while her husband was here with the children, presumably. And so we know, according to this person familiar with the condo transaction, that she wanted to move to DC. So could that have been one of the things that was causing stress in the relationship? Possibly. And so it's obviously something that investigators would be looking into, I imagine.
We're going to take some more questions in a little bit, but I want to get Evan out on just a couple of really important questions while we have him for another minute or two. Really quickly, Evan, a lot has been made. The video has circulated around social media. The authorities in suits, hazmat appearing suits, looking through that trash station, I believe in Peabody, Massachusetts. We have heard that evidence has been collected, but do we know any specifics on what they found there, and how significant it is as far as the case going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't sound good based on some of the local reporting that we've seen. We haven't been able to independently verify what was recovered from that search in Peabody at this trash facility. This was really pretty close to Brian Walsh's mother's house, where we know police were also investigating a dumpster at that facility that it sounds like may have ended up at the Peabody facility. Because the dumpster was missing. We went there a couple nights ago and saw that the dumpster was no longer there. That was the same night that investigators were at that trash transfer station investigating as well. So it seems along the right lines that investigators believe that the trash in that dumpster would end up at that facility. They have not told us specifically what they found, but I think, JB, you mentioned it before. There were some local reports here, some local media that was citing sources as that some of the things that were found were things that had blood on them, things that appear to be cleaning supplies, maybe match with some of the things that he was seen at buying at the Home Depot. But again, we haven't been able to independently confirm that. Another thing that was pretty troubling in this same reports, they're mentioning a hacksaw found.
Yep.
And so again, I don't have that confirmed myself, but this is something that has been reported in the last couple of days.
Yeah, Evan, there's trickles of information coming out from a lot of different outlets on this story. The final question I want to ask you really quickly, where the kids are. We're talking about 3 kids who have don't have their mother, don't have their father right now for different reasons. Where those kids are and their well-being. Is there anything that you've heard on the ground there in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so the state, the Department of Children and Families here in Massachusetts did tell us that the children are in their custody and they're safe. But we don't know any details, and that's because of privacy. Especially the state takes that extremely seriously when we're talking about young people as well. But obviously, we know she has 3 boys under the age of 6 years old, and they are in state custody. And we talked with somebody who said that they had interacted with the family, and that they were hearing that potentially as part of this state custody that they were in some kind of foster care. We also know that some of Anna's friends have made public pleas on the news to try to get the children. They want them all to be in the same place with people that they know, and so those pleas are out there, but we don't know if there's been any change in their custody status. But a couple days ago, the state of Massachusetts did tell us that they were in state custody, that they were safe.
Evan Lambert of News Nation. Evan, thank you so much. Total pro. And folks, really, you should follow Evan's reporting on this story. Evan, before we let you go, just your plan for the hours and days ahead, where folks can follow you on social media, and what's next in this story for you as you continue to monitor developments.
Yeah, thanks. So you can find me at Evan Lambert TV. We're here at least through today, and really in these next couple of hours, I'm going to try to do some on the ground reporting and find out if there's any new leads that we can chase down, any other people that we can talk with. It has been kind of tough. I think it seems like this community is very close knit. It's been pretty tough to track down some of the people that knew this family best. But we have been hearing things here and there. And so that's maybe one of my hopes for today, is to chat with some people that have some insight into this family. But, as you can imagine, the level of grief and questions that they're dealing with, anxiety, knowing that, there just aren't a lot of answers at this juncture, has been tough. So that's kind of what my plan is for today.
Evan Lambert, give him a follow, folks, on social media. Evan joining us live from Cohasset, Massachusetts. Evan, best of luck to you. I'll be following all the developments from you on social. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
All right, Evan Lambert, folks. We'll stay here with you live a little bit longer here on WFLA Now. Appreciate all the folks joining us and sending in questions with hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyEvan. If there's any, what we'll do now, we're going to send things to WFLA.com, where you can find the very latest, of course, on missing Mother Ana Walshe. Any developments will be posted there. We're going to be ending our Facebook stream back in just a moment on YouTube Live, WFLA.com, the WFLA app, back in 30. Back here with you live in the WFLA Now Stream Center. Hello to you. Happy Friday, folks, wherever you're watching from. JB here with you. We're going to do just a little bit of a Q&A, a little bit of a Friday chat, if you will. You can ask questions about any story in particular. You can ask, you could let us know what your weekend plans are. Just an opportunity for us to have a little bit of a chat with you as it is Friday. It has been a very busy week. A lot of stories that we've been covering here very, very closely, of course. From everything going on in Idaho to what's been happening in Massachusetts with missing mother Ana Walshe, to another story that we haven't talked about in some time. I want to bring you into the Stream Center here because we're talking about the Delphi murders as well. And I want to get to the very latest on Richard Allen's hearing this morning in Carroll County, Indiana. And I'm going to read this here. The Delphi murders, of course, is something that we excuse me, covered quite a bit last year. So I'm going to read this. This is from our sister station, Fox 59. Heavily shackled and accompanied by officers, Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen arrived for a pair of hearings in connection with the case. Before the hearing began, officers swept the defense table to make sure it was safe. 2 women were taken to the front of the courtroom. Allen mouthed, "I love you" to them. He wore a jumpsuit and a protective vest. The hearing was delayed until 10:26 a.m. It lasted about 10 minutes, wrapping up by 10:36. Defense attorneys and prosecutors spent several minutes talking to the judge in their chambers before proceedings began. Let's see here. The latest is that the trial is going to stay in Carroll County with jurors being brought in from elsewhere. Obviously, a massive trial that will happen in Carroll County, Indiana. Again, Richard Allen taken into custody for the Delphi murders that occurred years ago. And so that trial and those court hearings are proceeding. People asking online, why isn't there a live feed? I looked all morning to see if there would be a live feed. I do not believe the cameras were permitted inside the courtroom. But, let's just do another. I haven't checked in about an hour. So let's just do a quick check online and make sure that that what I was able to find out was correct. There is video. I might try to tweet this out in a little bit. Caitlin Reports for WRTV sharing out some video of Richard Allen in the jumpsuit, being taken away from the courtroom. This was a very, very heavy law enforcement presence surrounding Richard Allen as far as his court appearance this morning. So a lot going on there in Delphi. And, of course, the pursuit of justice continues in that case. A case that, we talked about quite a bit on I'm just kind of bringing up my stream notes here. Yeah. Libby and Abby, 14 and 13 years old. Richard Allen, 50 years old, arrested October 28th, charged with 2 counts of murder in those killings. Just, we're hopeful that we are closer to justice rather than farther away from it. Again, JB here with you live. Still got a little tickle from the cold that I was fighting last week. Hope everybody's good out there. If there's any questions, comments that we can address while we're here on YouTube Live, any and all questions are on the table. It can be about Idaho. It can be about Ana Walshe. It can be about Delphi. It can be about really any story that we have been covering here on the WFLA Now channel across all platforms. Yeah, it's been a very, very busy week. Carrie wants to know, #HJB, do you follow the Alex Murdaugh case much? Just from a distance. I haven't streamed on that case. I'm very selective our team is very selective with the stories that we cover. And that one is one that I have wanted to cover. But I haven't gotten too much into it. But that's something, too, that so there are a gajillion very interesting interviews with various experts that we could have on the Alex Murdaugh case, and something that I would love to discuss on stream if we get the opportunity to do so. Hashtag HJB, do you play golf or any other sports? I am a legendary golf player. Legendary for my inability to be any good at it. Golf is not my sport. I played basketball in high school. Basketball was my sport. I still play basketball from time to time, not as much as I would like. Any other sports? I love to play softball, but that's a fun leisurely activity that you can do on weekends if you get enough people together. But really, basketball was my sport growing up. I played in high school. I just played just endless hours of hoops. I grew up in New York. Lady Rebel, hashtag HeyJB, missing 4-year-old Athena Brownfield out of Oklahoma. I'm not familiar with that story, so let's look it up. This one I have not been following. Oklahoma police arrested the caretaker of a 4-year-old girl who was reported missing after a postal carrier found her sister wandering alone outside on Tuesday, authorities said. Local authorities began searching for Athena Brownfield Tuesday afternoon when the postal worker discovered her 5-year-old sister and notified police, according to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, which is also involved in the search. Alicia Adams, 31, was arrested Thursday afternoon on 2 counts of child neglect. 2 sisters reportedly in the care of Adams and her husband when the 5-year-old was found outside their home. This report coming from ABC News. That's something that I will pay attention to. That one is new to me. We have a system with following news across the country, and a lot of it has to do with our parent company and where we have stations. And while we do belong, I believe, to the largest collection of local television stations across the country, I don't know if we have. We have one station in Oklahoma, KFOR. Yeah, and here it is, right on their front page. This one slipped under my. This one was not on my radar. I got to tell you. I'll look into this. Thank you, Lady Rebel, for bringing it to my attention. Can't be aware of every news story across the country. I do my very best, folks, but it's impossible for me to know every story everywhere at every time, especially when I'm so honed in. When we're really focused on other stories, such as Idaho, I have to be honest, it's only human nature for us to spend so much time digging on one story and other stories across the country we might not be as aware of. So this is why I love talking with you guys, because you guys can help me find the stories that we should be pursuing. LeBay, hashtag AJB, if he, I believe he's referring to Brian Walshe here, is released in time, could he claim her life insurance? He would have to be, policies are going to prohibit anybody from getting away with a crime in relation to the deceased. So could he would have to be exonerated. He would have to have his name cleared and have zero connection whatsoever to her death. If he is found to be connected and it's proven in court to her disappearance, I would imagine that it would be impossible for him to claim any amount on her life insurance policy, provided that there is one. Excuse me. Manda Panda, yes, I was looking into this morning. Can you try to find out if media will be allowed in the courtroom during the trial in Delphi? I want to know the answer to this question, and this is one of I can't even begin to tell you how many courtrooms I've talked to when it comes to just asking them a very simple question: what does media access look like for this trial? And so I will absolutely find out what kind of access we'll get. Wordy Thompson, hashtag HJB. When are you going to stream in person with Tragos? You guys have great chemistry together. Thank you. We were live for a while yesterday. If you missed it, Wordy, I posted some links on my Twitter account, on Instagram. We did stuff on Instagram and TikTok as well. Please follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, Peter and I are good pals, and I enjoy working with Peter. Peter is a very extremely knowledgeable attorney, and the fact that he's right here in the Tampa Bay area, it's just super advantageous for us. I try to make him look good. He tries to make me look good. It's a good friendship. We're pals. And so, we did a lengthy stream yesterday on Idaho and the fact that it's going to be about 5.5 months until we get to the next pretrial hearing and why that is. So. Cassandra, hashtag AJB, why did the state get custody of Anna's kids? You would think family/friends would get priority. Those poor babies. Look, it's the law. The law dictates, and there will be, this is why family court exists. This is why, and different states have different, policies and rules when it comes to child custody in a situation like this. So, as to whether, I saw one report, but I'll be following along to see if the immediate or the closest family members can receive custody of the 3 boys. Again, all of them under the age of 6. One of them 2. Imagine a 2-year-old not having his mom or his dad. It's tragic. Again, if you use hashtag KJB, I can animate your comment on screen. If it doesn't have the hashtag, we let it scroll on by because we don't want to animate a comment on screen that we shouldn't be. Just because you're commenting doesn't mean that you want your comment to be featured. We're very cognizant of that. So if you use a hashtag, we animate it, or at least we try to. What was her occupation? Ana Walshe worked at a firm. A real estate investment firm in DC, and she commuted. It's a bit of a commute, as far as flying back and forth. Lonnie SD, hashtag KJB, just want to say thank you. Between you and Brian Enton, you have raised awareness and helped us fill in the blanks as things happen. Thank you. It's very kind. And it's interesting how paths cross. I'm so glad to have worked with Brian Enton. And I try to every now and again. Brian is terrific, but also too, there are other phenomenal reporters that don't get the recognition that they deserve. And while Brian is extremely popular online, there's some great reporters out there that do phenomenal work and don't get nearly enough recognition. Evan is one of them. Evan Lambert is fantastic. We had Robert Sherman on. He's great. Josh Benson, Masa Saidi, Walt Buteau, just some people that get recognition, but to me, it's never enough. And so thank you for the very, very kind comment. Shannon, hashtag HeyJB, did you cover Shanquella Robinson? That's another story that I'm not familiar with. And again, it's because we primarily focus on Florida news. We cover the stories that matter to our Florida viewers, even if it's outside of the state of Florida. And this one is not on my radar. So on the day, this is from WBTV, on the day Shanquella Robinson would have been celebrating her 26th birthday, her family and friends are continuing their push for justice. Reading here some notes. Since Robinson's death on October 29th, the world has demanded someone be held accountable as her name continues to trend on social media. Many have asked, how long does an FBI investigation take? So it is an FBI investigation. This is not one of our sister stations, WBTV, but I'm just reading some of their notes that they have on this story. I believe that's on their homepage too. So is that very active at the moment? Oh no, that's not on their homepage. That was an old homepage. Oh wow, so here's a Wikipedia page. He was killed while on vacation in Mexico, dying October 29, 2022, according to Wikipedia. She died shortly after traveling with a friend, a group of loose acquaintances, and after arriving in the Mexican resort town of Cabo San Lucas, which I was at last year. The circumstances leading to her mysterious death, as well as the medical treatment, police report, and forensic inquiries into the cause of her untimely passing have led to an ongoing high-profile transnational criminal investigation within the United States and Mexico. Wow. That makes, for us journalists on the local level, that makes the case even harder to cover when you're talking about there being an international link. Because the higher up that the higher up you go in law enforcement, and there's various levels of law enforcement, that you have your local police department, right? You have your county sheriff's office, usually, most times. Then you have state police. Then you have federal police, federal investigator. And then when you get to the federal level, there's just so many different departments, but it's usually the FBI that will handle a criminal investigation. But when you're talking about something that goes international, then you're talking about the State Department, you're talking about the Department of Justice, and you're talking about so many. It's just becomes so much harder to get information. Tremendously. When you get to the federal level, that's the biggest gap. Local level it's pretty easy for us to work with local authorities. State authorities, still, on speed dial, we have state authorities here in the state of Florida. But there's a big gap when you get to the federal level, and that's why cases like this one, there can be such a scarce amount of information. To Tempe's question, no, it was just an opportunity just to get some fast facts. To movie reviewer, that's not necessarily true. And also, too, you always have to remember that when it comes to the stories that I cover, it is a collective thing. And while you see me here at WFLA, and you might wonder, I'm very much the face of this platform. There's a very large effort behind the scenes that goes into the stories that we cover. And I pay attention to my DMs. I pay attention to, this is why Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Facebook, these channels, to be able to reach me and recommend stories that we cover. That's why it's so important that I get feedback from people. And so people say, oh, why don't you cover this story? Oh, you're not covering that story. Well, if I have 80 messages saying cover this story A, and I only have 2 messages, saying cover story B, I'm not going to completely disregard story B, but you have to look at the fact that a majority of people want us to focus on this story. So that's why we're always paying very, very close attention. It's not the sole, the sole thing that we use to determine what stories we cover. It's not just based on how many messages we get or how much attention that there is on that case. We look at a lot of different variables, but when it comes to the stories that we cover, we have a team that sits down and figures it out together, and a lot of different variables come into play. But we're trying to do best by our viewers, and our viewers are a big part of why we do live streaming coverage on certain stories, and other stories are done. Just because we're not live streaming, it doesn't mean we're not covering it. Also, that's another thing. We might have articles on our website, on our app. It's a massive effort that goes on here with WFLA and with our parent company as far as producing a lot of content to make sure that our content is very diverse and well represented across many, many states, many, many cities across the country. Cappy says, #KJB, you can't keep track of all these missing persons cases. As of December 31st, there are over 93,000 open cases in the U.S. alone. It's massive. It is. And we do our very best to cover as many as possible. And again, just because we're not live streaming, it doesn't mean we're not covering it. Some stories, what is the purpose of live streaming? The purpose of live streaming these stories and the purpose of doing it on WFLA Now is to help clear the air of some of the misinformation that exists. When there's so many questions that exist on a story, there's an opportunity for us to help separate fact from fiction. Some stories are very clear cut and dry. I mean, you get the facts right up front and there aren't too many lingering questions. Others, it's the exact opposite. You get very little from official sources, and then there's a myriad of questions that surround them. Those are usually the stories that are best suited for live streaming because of the amount of unknown. We can help sort through and help you navigate what we do know, what we don't know, what is fact and what is fiction. Hopefully that makes sense. Sylvia, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm taking notes here. SK Musi, could you check in Aaron Christensen? I'm going to put that in my notes. And we also had Shanquella Robinson. We're going to make sure that when we have our meetings that, and look, a lot of times when it comes to our coverage of stories, we cover stories when where live streaming is usually revolves around developments. So if we get breaking news in the Shanquella Robinson case, as an example, that might be an opportunity for us to hop on a live stream and do something. LeBay, hashtag HJB, do you cover global cases or just inside the U.S.? Mostly just the U.S. In fact, usually in Florida, but we do, of course, national stories. Elena, thank you. Guys, I gotta get going. And hop off stream. Really, we're gonna be, trying to do as much as we can across all platforms, but we're starting to ramp up efforts on Instagram and TikTok. If you go over to my Instagram or TikTok, feel free to share that you're coming over from YouTube Live or WFLA.com, the WFLA app, wherever you're watching right now. Let's do a quick shout out. Let me know in the comment section where you guys are watching from. And yes, if you'd like to follow, we're going to do some really unique content on TikTok and Instagram Reels. So I hope you guys follow me at WFLAJB over there on those platforms too. It's about meeting the needs of as many platforms as possible. So right now we're on YouTube Live, and I'll spend a good amount of my day looking at the other platforms as well, whether it's Facebook or whether it's our website or app or TikTok or Instagram. So yeah, we'll end out the stream. Just a quick check. Where are you watching from? I'll shout out some names and some locations, like from Darling Deb, who's joining us from Houston, Texas. Hello to Deb, joining us from Houston. That's funny. Merp says, hashtag AJB. Where are you watching? YouTube. Yes. Amanda says, I follow you on TikTok, Twitter, and IG. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's also a good opportunity. Those platforms, a good opportunity, less so on TikTok, but for me to let you know when we're streaming. You can click on the bell here on YouTube. You can subscribe, and you can get push alerts to know when we go live, and that's very, very handy. But also, I can put out notifications as well on Twitter and IG. Sylvia is joining us from the evergreen state of Washington. Hello. Barbara, hi from Amsterdam. That's pretty cool. I've never been. Would love to go. Would love to take in the sights. Cappy says, in Florida alone, over 1,200 open missing persons cases. You guys do a great job. Cap is joining us from Hudson, Florida. Thank you so much. Lulu is watching from Dublin, Ireland. Lil Patty is joining us from Higgsonville, Missouri. Chris from Arizona. Hi, Chris. Really appreciate it, folks. And thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us here on WFLA Now. If we do not hop on stream, I hope everybody out there has a really great weekend, a happy weekend. And I'll be, of course, monitoring all the stories that we've been covering this week and even before this week. Any new developments, I'll try to share out as quickly as possible on those platforms at WFLAJB on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, and on Instagram. And I hope to see you guys over there as we do content unique to those platforms and those platforms as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Very latest on this story, Ana Walshe is on WFLA.com, the WFLA app.